Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Mondays Down South. We had a nice long break for the holidays. Sorry that your MDS boys couldn't bring you content during that time, but we were spending time with parents and family, which is more important, I would say. So it's good to be back. We've obviously had a ton happen in that time. A lot of sports, a lot of playoffs implications, and now we're rolling into the playoff week. So can't think of a better time to get back on after the teams have been decided and the playoff hunt starts this weekend. A month out from the Super Bowl. We're super excited. With that being said, today's topic, we're going to do our top 3 X factors in terms of players for teams that are in the playoffs this year. And now that it's all carved out, this should be fun to kind of see which direction we take it in. We're trying our best not to just give you the willy-nilly quarterback of every team. We're trying to be a little bit creative with it, but I think we might have some similarities. We'll see what happens. With that being said, before we jump into our segment, Zach and Evan, any thoughts for our viewers? It's been a little while, so would love for your guys to get some input in before we jump into our segment.
Yeah, just figured I'd start off by congratulating the SB Fantasy Football Champion, Mr. Sakim Nanini. Welcome. What's kind of nice though is all 3 of us made the playoffs this year, which is unheard of. So Evan snuck in as the 6th seed, coming down. I think it was like the 9th seed or 8th seed coming in couple weeks before the playoff time. Ended up losing the first round of the playoffs. I did as well on the other side of the bracket in the 4-5 matchup. So Cy was lucky to dodge my presence and play Colin instead, but cleaned up pretty quickly. And Cy, congratulations, man.
Thanks, man. It's number 3 in the league. I still got a little ways to go to catch Mr. Klein, but at least I'm in silver medal positioning right now. Got to work on that. With that being said, I guess what I was thinking, maybe. Okay, with that being said, Zach, you kick it off. We'll do that.
You want me to kick it off? All right, cool.
Yeah, do it.
All right, so X factors in terms of the first round wildcard matchups. There's so many of them. This guy is a defensive guy, a cornerback for the Houston Texans by the name of Derek Stingley Jr. And Derek Stingley, obviously a beast at LSU, ranked the 7th highest cornerback in terms of Pro Football Focus. So he's killing it this year. He's one of the reasons why the Houston Texans are even there, aside of CJ Stroud and a couple other players. But Derek has held his side of the bargain, and it's going to be evident in this matchup against the Cleveland Browns because the Texans are playing at home, and Cleveland's coming down. They're supposed to beat the Texans. I think the spread is -3 Cleveland's way. And Joe Flacco is getting a ton of recognition right now. The comeback where he was the armchair quarterback back onto the field quarterback, and he's crushing it. But there's one guy in mind, and his name is Amari Cooper. And he has been going off since Joe Flacco has come back into his regime. So if Derek Stingley can shut down Amari Cooper, I legitimately think that the Houston Texans can take down the Cleveland Browns, and I think they can do it relatively seamlessly. Like we're talking like a touchdown. So it's all on Derek Stingley here, and I wish him the best of luck. But Amari Cooper is obviously a very challenging player to guard. But if Stingley locks in, Pro Football Focus has him ranked 7th highest corner in the country right now, or in the nation. Why not give him a shot? So I got Derek Stingley here as my number 1.
Actually, I need to pull up some stats. I was going to use my phone for stats.
Go for it. Zach, why are you cheesing there?
Dude, this is a podcast. We're supposed to have all this put together. He's like, yeah, go 1 second. Let me look up some stats on the internet.
No, I already know. I just don't know the exact numbers because I was going to have them on my phone.
In your phone, yeah, I get that.
I know loosely what they are. Zach, yeah, no, Derek Stingley is actually one of my answers. I definitely agree with you. If you jump back to, I think it was maybe week 14, these two teams played in Houston. Now, CJ Stroud did not play, but if you look at the other side of the ball, Amari Cooper went 11 for 265 and two touchdowns, and the Browns won by over 10 points. So I think clearly they need to shut him down in this game. So it was definitely mine, but I kind of had a 1A, 1B for this game. And mine was going to be David Njoku, because I do think Derek Stingley is definitely capable of shutting down Amari Cooper, or at least limiting him. And if he's able to do that, the Texans have a very good run defense. So, if who's next on the list to make plays, it's going to be Njoku, who's had a huge second half, especially with Flacco. So, Stingley was mine, but Njoku was kind of a second for the same reason of someone else needing to step up in the passing game.
Yeah, those are really good ones. I actually strongly consider Njoku as well because I was thinking to myself, like Flacco would be too obvious. Obviously, Amari's the number one, but if the focus is on him, they need to be able to throw the ball to someone else. It's got to be Njoku, who has been very good since Flacco's taken over. So I think that's a really good one. And Stingley I didn't even think of him. That's a great one. I'm going to jump over to someone who maybe a year or two ago would have been very obvious, but this year it seems like, especially late in the season, he's underwhelmed compared to his capabilities. And I'm going to pick Stephon Diggs as my third option. The Bills have been on a heater. They've been playing amazing football recently, albeit without Stephon being his consistent self. He's had a couple decent games here and there, but we haven't seen Stephon do like what Stephon normally does with Josh Allen. And if the Bills are going to kind of reverse the course, like compared to prior years where they were favorites by a lot of people's opinions and judgments, they were the favorites and ended up struggling and not winning. If they're going to flip that script and come from a position of not being one of the favorites, not being one of the high seeds and then working their way up and winning it all, it's going to be because Stephon Diggs shows up, because they're not going to be able to do it without him, being the anchor of that offense for Josh Allen, who has had to rely on a lot more options. So I think he's going to be the absolute X factor for them to actually overcome that hurdle and win the AFC and potentially even the Super Bowl. So I'll leave it there.
I think, like you mentioned, I think this is almost a nightmare game for the Lions here. They're going to be, tons of pressure with the first playoff game, at Ford Field, and forever. And someone's going to need to step up. And you mentioned Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, we don't know for sure, but he's probably out of this game after getting hurt last week, which is crazy that they were still playing their starters so long with how little that game meant, and turned out because Dallas won didn't mean anything at all. AJ Brown too. We can talk about some of the other injuries later, but and without Sam Laporta, big over the middle of the field guys, someone is going to have to step up and make plays that they don't usually rely on. So I'm going to throw a big time dart here and say that Jameson Williams needs to make a big play to give them some else on the board, because obviously we know what Gibbs can do, we know what Montgomery can do, we know what Amon-Ra can do. Obviously I do agree he needs to have a big game, but someone else is going to need to make a big play for them, and I think it might need to be Jameson. Either a big pass or an end around or something, but he only gets the ball a couple times a game, but a lot of times it's a big play, and I think they might need that here.
I like that one a lot because I think recently he's been good for like at least one big play a week. But I think this needs to be a game where they can give him a couple targets and he can give you a couple of downfield catches, which is what I think he should turn into. Jameson Williams is an incredible talent. The reality is he just hasn't been able to stay on the field, and they haven't been able to fully work him into a plan. But that's someone I'm keeping my eye on, not just for the playoffs, but for coming seasons. It's funny, though, because I didn't anticipate all of our number twos becoming so receiver heavy, but I'm going to jump from a second-year receiver, and who Zach referenced is also at like a second or third-year receiver, to a first-year receiver, because I think Zay Flowers is going to need to do a lot of big things for these Ravens to win the Super Bowl. They're the favorites in the AFC, and rightfully so. They've won the big games recently, and I totally get that. But without Mark Andrews, most likely there for the majority of the playoffs, they can't win with just Lamar improvising the entire time, doing this and that. Like, I get that it's a big part of their offense, but they need someone they can rely on in the passing game. And you've seen shades of Zay Flowers being terrific when Andrews has been out. He's been someone that they can rely on and throw the ball to. My only concern has been that he doesn't get it maybe as often as I think he should, because I see him open often. He might be a rookie, but he knows how to make plays coming from BC. So I really think that if the Ravens want to win it all in this playoffs, especially once they get to the Super Bowl, we're going to need Zay Flowers to have a huge huge showing this playoff. So I'm going to go Zay Flowers.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot because it's hard to put the onus on a rookie, especially on a team that's in first place right now with a commanding lead over really any other team right now outside of the 49ers. And you pick on a rookie, but it makes sense because he really is that dynamic. All right, so my third guy, I'll stay on the offensive side of the things. Let's go the Miami Dolphins Kansas City Chiefs game. I'm actually not going to pick on the running backs for the Dolphins. I'm going to pick on Isaiah Pacheco. I think if that man can run super angry that entire game, it will take some of the pressure off of Mahomes to actually look like Mahomes again, to make plays effortlessly. The temperature is going to be negative. It's going to feel like -5 degrees in Arrowhead Stadium. We all know what that means for Tua. He's going to struggle, right? This is going to be a low-scoring game, but it doesn't have to be if Isaiah Pacheco can have that angry, steamrolling running attitude where he is trucking defenders and just trudging against the sidelines, carrying 2 or 3 people with him. If Isaiah Pacheco can get involved early, and this guy's like built for the cold. I mean, like the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to have a problem in the cold weather compared to Miami, which it's going to be very dangerous for Miami. Like they don't even know what they're stepping into, I think. But I think the moment they start handing the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco and they start getting yards over and over again, it's going to set that play action up. So yes, you could say, why not put the ball in the hands of the best player in football and Patrick Mahomes? I get that. But he struggled this year. And truth be told is they need to reestablish the run game. And Pacheco wants that responsibility. So give it to him in one of the most dire playoff games this week. So that's kind of my guy. But Ev, I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a game we haven't talked about yet. It's gonna be Green Bay and Dallas. I'm gonna go wide receiver again. I'm gonna go Jaden Reed. I think Green Bay can genuinely win this game. I think it's gonna be really, really difficult. Obviously, I think they're like 7.5-point dogs, but I think that they have the ability to win this kind of game. We've seen it. They smoked Detroit. I think on Thanksgiving in Detroit, like they can beat good teams if they play, kind of at their peak potential. But they're going to need guys on the outside to make plays. I think obviously Dallas is going to score a lot of points, so they're going to need some of these young receivers to step up. I think the Dallas corners, obviously, they will jump routes. They get a lot of interceptions and those types of things, but they can be beat. Jaden Reed's played really well the last few weeks down the stretch here. He's had a great year overall. And I think he needs to be the one out of that young receiver group to step up and be the one to make plays and give themselves a chance here. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but if they're going to win that game, I think Jaden Reed needs to have a big game.
I really like that, Ev, because I feel like that's someone who the casual football fan doesn't even know who he is. And I think he's been so important to that team ever since Christian Watson got hurt. Even before Christian Watson got hurt, he was like such a dynamic player for them, and they use him so much. And I feel like he's maybe the receiver that does the most, that gets talked about the least. So that's a really good one. And yeah, he's super important. And I do agree with you. I think if that offense plays the way they can, they got a shot in that game. 7.5 seems like a big line. Number one for me, we had a conversation about MVPs earlier this year, and I said this position will never win it. But the reality is it should, in my opinion, because of how much of a difference maker he is. And, he's your classic Commanders pass him up, or I guess at the time Redskins pass him up, and then he absolutely becomes the core of transforming a team. If Trent Williams stays healthy this year and stays on the field, assuming they aren't down to their 4th quarterback by the NFC Championship game, which is Christian McCaffrey, I believe the San Francisco 49ers will win it all, at least in the current trajectory. I know they lost to the Ravens a couple weeks ago. I get it. But I think they're going to come in fiery. But it all revolves around Trent Williams, especially in that zone running scheme, especially with them getting that ball out. I never in my life thought I would signal out one offensive lineman as my number one X factor for the playoffs relative to, Patrick Mahomes, a potential GOAT, all these other players. But the reality is I want to give Trent Williams his due and make sure that he gets the spotlight he deserves, because a position like that will never win the MVP, but he really is an MVP for that team. And he is so important to what Kyle Shanahan does and to how that offense gels. And I legitimately believe that team can stay healthy and he can anchor them. The sky's the limit for them. So I'm going to make number one Trent Williams.
I respect that. I love that. I like how you make the comparison to if he plays well, the 49ers will smoke in the Super Bowl, let alone the NFC Championship game. So I would agree with you there. Ev, what do you think?
My question is, when does he not play well? That
Well,
guy's such a
it's
stud.
less about him playing well and more about him staying on the field.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, just
definitely. I mean,
that's
obviously.
why I say he X factor, because it's like he
Yeah.
determines everything. Like they could keep every other player on their team, and if Williams gets hurt and he's out, they're losing. Like that's how I feel. Like I just like he's the biggest. Like when he got hurt earlier this year, missed like 4 weeks. I know Debo was out, I know other people was out, but the difference was Trent Williams, and if he's in, they're in a good spot. So that's really how I feel.
Yeah.
And but I do like you guys going with some of those more like younger, like not as thought about guys. I just realized there's some bigger names that haven't won recently, so I thought maybe that'd be. So I like our different approaches to this. Do you guys have any honorable mentions?
Mine is not a player, but a positional group, which is going to
Okay.
be again focused on the wild card weekend, but the Kansas City secondary and limiting the ability of Tyreek Hill to go over the top. I think that's pretty obvious, but no one's really giving Miami a chance this weekend, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Obviously, yeah, that's the key to stopping Miami is to not let Tyreek beat you over the top. So whether that's Trent McDuffie or some of the other young guys that have played terrific out there this year. Obviously, they need to keep him underneath and force them to kind of go, one play at a time down the field.
Man, it's gonna be a fantastic matchup between Snead and Tyreek Hill. I think Snead is the guy that actually holds the keys to potentially limiting Tyreek Hill, and I actually think he's going to do it. I can't wait to get into some of our games and how we think those are going to fare out, because I actually feel very confident about these spreads in comparison to previous weeks.
I look forward to talking
I'm
about
curious
this,
to see if we're going to agree or disagree, because I was looking at them and I actually feel very confident, not just about one or two games, but about quite a bit. So maybe we get into that now, unless you guys have any honorable mentions, Si.
Well, I just want to say that if like this is, I don't know how you make this guy an honorable mention, but I just want to talk about him because you guys know I love talking about him. If Mahomes somehow manages to, and I know nobody else here believes that he will, besides potentially me, if Mahomes somehow manages to come out of this and still win the AFC and potentially win the Super Bowl, he is the GOAT. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like I don't even want to hear it. I don't even care about Brady. I don't care about anyone else. If he somehow goes on the road after Miami and manages to, beat some of these teams, with the supporting cast he has, like I'd rather have Zach as my receiver at this point. Like I'd rather be throwing dimes to him on the Jacksonville grass than have the guys that Mahomes has been playing with this year, besides, of course, Kelsey, who's been hurt. So I'm just going to throw that out there. That's an honorable mention for me because I wanted to include him on my list, but I was like, that would just be crazy to include the Super Bowl MVP from last year.
Well, but to your point, speaking of like big name X factors, like Zach's been saying all season, like Travis Kelsey, like they need vintage Travis Kelsey because otherwise I don't think they have enough. So I don't know if it's possible for him to do that with his current health status, but they're gonna need it. So
yeah, I think Pacheco was a really good call for that reason, Zach. I agree.
Yep. Should we do some coaching stuff?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
we got
I think
the national championship and big college news today too. So
I was just
there's a
going to
lot
say,
of other stuff.
I think we should bring up college, especially the coaching college element, and as well as a quick like NFL coaching situation, and then we can do our analysis of this week's games.
Love it.
Of course. Sorry, go ahead. You do it.
No, I was just gonna say, obviously, big news came out 2 hours ago. Nick Saban's retiring.
Yep.
I don't think anyone saw that coming. I certainly did not. I mean, huge news. It looks like, kind of early rumors are Dan Lanning from Oregon maybe is one of the favorites, but certainly a lot of names in that mix, and all the big names will come with huge buyouts as well. To get them out of their current role. So it should be interesting. I mean, how that impacts Alabama moving forward. I mean, that's obviously kind of the big headline, post national championship.
Yeah, I don't know that there's one person on this planet that can completely change the scope of an entire sport as much as Nick Saban retiring does. First and foremost, I'm just a round of applause to a GOAT of our generation. I mean, maybe the best of all time. Like as much as people love to hate on Alabama, and of course LSU prior to that, like Saban, what he has been able to do with a franchise and continuously win prior to all the new rules and whatever it is truly something special. So kudos to him, tip the hat to him. But beyond that, first and foremost, I think going with Oregon's coach would be a mistake personally. I don't know that I would want to go into a 12 team with the new SEC with Oregon. He's clearly done a great job in Oregon, but like that's not like a Lincoln Riley level hire, right? Like that's the level they should be on. They might need to get an NFL coach there. I don't know, but I don't know that that's good enough. Secondly, the SEC and just college football next year is going to be so weird because every year it's pretty much given that Alabama is like top 2 in the SEC and most likely top 2 in the country or top 4 in the country. And now that's, at least for the immediate future, you can't just immediately just assume that about that program. So the realm of who the best teams in the nation are changes drastically. And, Kirby Smart is officially the best head coach in the game. So it should be really interesting. But Zach, go ahead.
I get both your points about Dan Lanning at Alabama. I actually kind of lean more Evan's direction. I think he's a young personality, very energetic. He's got a lot of football acumen, obviously, and then taking Oregon to new heights. Oregon hadn't really been to that level. They were just two Washington losses away from being in the national championship themselves. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I know they lost to them in the Pac-12 championship. I believe they lost to them earlier in the season. So what he was able to do with Bo Nix. I mean, he's an offensive mastermind, young personality, kind of like that Shane Beamer-esque echelon, but like even an upgrade from that.
Of course.
And going to Bama. I think it's a risk. I see size points, a huge risk, but I think it's definitely worth it. And they're going to have to, if you think about it, Alabama's going to have to move quickly here, because if they don't, they're going to lose a lot of recruits. And every head coach is banging on the door of all these players with name, image, and likeness deals and different types of offers. And it's going to be very easy to steer some of these 5 stars away from Bama. And I think Bama's going to need to move rather quickly here. Congratulations to Jim Harbaugh for winning the national championship. Michigan defeated Washington. Between the MDS boys, we're actually pretty split on it. I think Cy was pretty vehement on Washington's side. I was on Michigan's side, and I think Ev was a little bit in between. But overall, it was a great game. Both teams were fantastic. Penix, great season, and I don't know. What do you guys think about the game? Do you guys get surprised by anything?
I just want to say congratulations on your new head coach, Zach. You're gonna get a college football championship winner coaching your team next year. That's wonderful for you.
For the Falcons?
So I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I'm messing with you.
Okay,
He's going to that's my joke about him going to the NFL, because I feel like there's absolutely no reason that he should be going back to Michigan at this point, especially with the whole scouting and fraud thing that they had going on earlier this year. Like, he's gone. It'd be shocking if he wasn't. And obviously, you're one of the head coach openings with a lot of young talent. So I'm just throwing it out as a joke because I expect Harbaugh to be in the NFL. So here's 2 massive programs, Alabama and Michigan, that just both finished top 4 in the country that are about to have job openings next fall. And I can't even imagine the weird, web that it's going to create. Because imagine, like, first of all, I certainly hope this doesn't happen, but imagine someone like a Dabo ends up going to one of those programs, and then Clemson reassess. You know what I mean? Like, so it's going to be fun to see what happens with that. But yeah, you were spot on with the Michigan pick, Zach. You deserve a ton of credit for that, because you were right. The defense just overwhelmed them. And I'm a huge Penix believer. I still am. I think he'll be great in the pros if he ends up in the right situation. But the moment got a little too bright for him. And I think he was forcing it too much. Like, he clearly missed throws that he would never miss in 100 years because he's just so accurate and so on point. And I think he was in his own head. And I think he realized that he needed to play his best game ever to win it, and it got the best of him. So good call, Zach.
What are your thoughts on Penix, Ev?
Yeah, I think he's being graded appropriately now. Probably, I probably overreacted to the Texas game, thinking that he should be taken over. Potentially, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, some combination of the top 3. But I thought he played horrible. I thought they definitely had a chance to win that game. I mean, give credit to Michigan. They turned out to be a bit of a buzzsaw just with their depth and their physicality. But there were so many plays on the board, even in the first half. Obviously, the big one is when Washington was mounting a comeback in the second half. He had Rome Odunze wide open. He underthrew him by 10 yards.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to score on that possession. I would argue if he played slightly better, they would have won that game. I just quite frankly thought he was terrible. And like Cy said, obviously that's the biggest game he's played in his life, and he does tend to have some accuracy issues at times. And for me, he looked exactly like Tua Tagovailoa, which again seems like an obvious and lazy comp because they're just like lefties. But he reminded me so much of Tua in that game, and I do not mean that as a compliment because I'm not a Tua fan. That when Tua gets faced against the best teams and the best defenses, gets under some pressure, it doesn't look too good. So I'm fine with him at QB4, I guess, in kind of the middle first round. I thought he was horrible. I thought they could have won that game if he played a little bit better.
Yeah, before we move on from him real quick, I'm going to defend him really quickly, though. I just think that he obviously missed throws, and he has certainly been better. He missed throws that he easily made in the Texas game, and so the pressure got to him. But the difference, though, is I think putting on him completely is a little bit absurd, though, because that Michigan team across the board, with the exception of the quarterback position, was just better. And that defensive line is an NFL defensive line. They ate Washington for dinner, and there was pressure in his face. He was literally limping the whole second half with how many hits he was taking that whole game. And then beyond that, on the flip side of that, Michigan's offensive line was creating 20-yard gaps in the center for their running backs to just run straight through. So that's where Zach was spot on. It's I truly believe Penix was one of the best players on the field. He just didn't play up to par because the guy literally was trying to carry the entire team on his back and try to do too much, and it didn't work out, right? I think he could be good. And my bold prediction is if the Steelers are in a position to be able to draft him, if he falls far enough, which the initial thing should be, I think he is the perfect person for the Steelers to take this year because that's all they need to be a competitor in the playoffs, in my opinion.
The challenge I'll make to that, though, is Michigan didn't score any points from the middle of the second quarter until the fourth quarter. Did they score at all? Maybe a field goal? They got punched in the mouth. Washington's defense got destroyed in the first quarter and a half, gave up 21 points, whatever. But and then the offense steadied the ship. But the defense was absolutely lights out, rock solid until the fourth quarter. Maybe they got a little tired and they were able to make a big play. It was there for Washington's offense to get it done. You're completely right, though. Obviously, it's a team. Michigan's just a buzzsaw. But then my other critique was, and this is easy for me to say from while watching the game on my couch and now sitting on my phone recording a podcast about it. But Penix just wasn't really willing to stand in there and get hit in the mouth to make a throw. Saw the pressure coming, got on his back foot, missed the throw. But if he just hangs in that pocket, accepts the fact that he's going to get drilled in the mouth, he could have stepped in and made some of those throws. So again, easy to say from my couch, but that would be my other critique is sometimes you just got to hang in there and get hit.
Yeah, you can do that once or twice a game. You can't do that all game. You're not going to make it out the next play. Yeah.
Hey, leave it all on the line.
I think the one reason I was really cynical of Washington from the start was because I knew they were going to abandon their run game really quickly, whereas Michigan was more balanced. And so to Sai's credit, I think Penix, was kind of put in a tight spot when you have the most elite corners in college football playing against you, and they kind of know what the play call is going to be because you're running it 7 or 8 times a football game for 30 yards. I just think that the Washington scheme coming in, that air raid scheme, it works against Pac-12 defenses. It doesn't work against juggernaut, disciplined, polished Big Ten defenses like Michigan. So I definitely think that was a problem going into the game. But I actually really like Sai's point about the Steelers pick because you incorporate, the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been big on running the football. You got Jalen Warren, you've got Najee if they bring him around for another year. I actually could see that being a really, really good place for learning and development. Now, he's not going to have guys like George Pickens and things like that because he's probably going to walk. But you never know what the Steelers can do. But they're not really in a win now mode. I mean, they're a playoff team this year, but I think that's purely because of Mike Tomlin. And I don't know if Penix actually takes them to the next hump that quickly. So I'm split on it, actually. I'm a little split.
I'd like to see him in Atlanta. Atlanta's my spot for Penix.
No, we're going after Fields.
I think they're keeping Fields.
I don't know if they are.
Okay, we should talk
I don't
about
know
this.
if they are.
There's no way.
We should talk about
There's no way that Chicago is actually going to keep Justin Fields when you have a once in a generational player, Caleb Williams. I know his stock is dropping, but that always happens right around this time of year. He's going to be the first overall pick. And yes, Justin Fields has showed great moments. He showed really bad moments. Ultimately, he's not the player that Caleb Williams could be. And I think the Bears are so afraid of keeping Justin Fields and then having to listen for 10 years down the road, oh, they had the opportunity to draft the Caleb Williams player, like a Patrick Mahomes echelon player, and they chose to be loyal to a guy that they drafted 3 years before. I just think that Fields is going to get shopped, and I think they can get a lot of stuff from him too. So we'll see.
Yeah, resetting the market is a big part of it, right? Because like I'm not saying that money is the number one thing, but Fields in a year is going to demand, probably a Daniel Jones kind of, not that he'll get as much because of what happened with Daniel Jones, but he's going to ask for similar amounts of money because he could argue that, I'm as good, if not better, or whatever it is. And I think that if you truly believe Caleb Williams is a generational talent, which a lot of people do, you can get Caleb and get a rookie contract from him and then still be able to pay, the rest of the guys that are on the team and add another big free agent, maybe put a T Higgins across from DJ Moore, do something like that. So I'm with you there, Zach. I especially because I do think that the Bears, if they negotiate well, can get like a late first, early second for Justin Fields. They might be able to, dude. He's young enough and he was successful enough this year. There's going to be a lot of people bidding for him.
So if you weren't going to keep Fields, and now granted, I don't think they've totally decided yet, then why would they keep Eberflus if that was the plan, right? When you want to bring in a new coach, especially with the current coaching cycle with tons of awesome candidates,
it's because he's a defensive stud. He's a defensive stud.
They did fire the OC, so maybe, but I would think that if they were going to switch quarterbacks, then they would have switched Cousins.
Eberflus took a defense that had very little talent and made them outside of their amazing corner and made them like reasonably good in a lot of games, and that's why they're going to keep him, and that's why they
invested a lot in defense though.
But even then, it's not like I don't know, it's not there yet.
My other point is I think they lose the locker room if they get rid of Fields. That like you listen to DJ Moore talk about Fields, like you really risk losing the locker room if you switch to a guy that has like one of the biggest egos we've ever seen from a guy that they absolutely love and believe in. So I think it's gonna be interesting. And I don't think they've decided yet. So obviously, if they are keeping Fields, they're not going to stay at one. They would obviously trade back, presumably just a spot or two to take Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think they're a playoff team next year with Justin Fields. I'm still in on Justin Fields, so I'm in the minority there, I think, but I'm still in. Now, granted, you do want to ideally reset that clock, so that's obviously a big thing. So
yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but I do think Justin Fields to Atlanta would be a nice fit. But if not, that's also a good location for Penix. I mean, that's a perfect offense for him to walk right into. Just please give Kyle Pitts a quarterback. That's all I can hope for at this point. If you have to give Kirk Cousins $80 million to bring him there for 1 year coming off injury, I don't care. Do it. You might not win a Super Bowl, but at least give him a chance to get some, to show out, because I want my Hall of Fame take to not look so bad right now. And it's not his fault. I just want to say there.
Do not sign Kirk Cousins, please.
No. Why? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
You need. That seems like that's kind of, well, it sounds like he wants to stay and would take a discount to stay, so you might be right. But I mean, I think I do love Fields there too, if he becomes available. That was my original place for him from a while back. So we'll see.
I just think you guys need, Zach, a quarterback that's going to be very comfortable airing it out, because you already have multiple receiving weapons. Like, I don't want a quarterback that's going to want to like run every other play in Atlanta. I want a quarterback that's like, I am going to stand in the pocket and get the ball to Bijan on the run game, flip it over to him in the screen game. But I'm also going to give Drake London and Kyle Pitts, who are terrific young talents, finally the chance to catch footballs open in the field. Like, I don't want another situation where it's like you get a quarterback there, he throws one play, runs 3 plays. Like, we just can't do that anymore.
I agree.
You guys need to give him a chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll also out.
True.
That's a big story. I And then there's just tons of big name coaches available, lots of openings. Mike Vrabel, big surprise there. I guess any just broad takes on the coaching market or any like predictions on who's going to get who and whatnot.
If you're a team that has a head coach opening, do you go for a player coach like Mike Vrabel, who is going to work so hard and earn his players' respect? He's going to turn a team into a great team. He might not be the mathematician that a Mike McDaniels is, but he is like he played in the league. He's a league veteran. He knows football. He's going to be able to take you to the next level. You're just not really sure why, right? Would you prefer a guy like Mike Vrabel on your team, like for the Commanders by chance? Or would you rather get a guy like, a Ben Johnson, an unproven talent that has showcased, a pretty effective offensive scheme in Detroit?
Evan, can I jump in on this?
Yeah, of course.
This is going to be, I don't know if it's a hot take, but a bold take, if you will. I am completely out on player coaches for the most part. Like I legitimately believe, and this is not because I don't think that they are great coaches or because I don't believe that they can be successful within a certain scheme. It's because in this modern NFL, scheming is everything. It's no longer the league where like John Fox wins a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning because your quarterback is so good and audibles at the line and makes the adjustments on his own, where he is like the OC on the field. That doesn't exist anymore. Like the best teams with the best offenses and the best defenses have the coaches calling all the plays, like saying this is what we need to do and this is what your second read is, right? Like it's no longer the league where Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees are going out there being like, we are going to win all the games because we're going to be coaching on the field. So the players coach situation is really great when you have that, but that doesn't exist anymore. Now it's the Kyle Shanahans, the Andy Reeds, those kinds of guys that are finding success, to Sean McVay's, even LaFleur, like who was getting a lot of crap like prior, but was in that coaching tree with all those guys prior, is now having success with a young Jordan Love. A lot of it because of their scheming and how they're approaching offense. So teams that have new openings that come available, they need to get their guy that can coach either the offense or the defense, more preferably the offense. And the reason I say that is because the OCs keep getting hired away. You want a perfect example? My Colts just missed the playoffs by one, unfortunate play at the end of the season. And our head coach is Shane Steichen, who just took us to a 9-win season with our starting quarterback getting hurt and with us missing Jonathan Taylor for half the season. And look at what the Eagles are doing right now with their head play caller missing. They completely tanked at the end of the year. You need guys that are going to call your plays. But the reality also is those guys are starting to become few and far between, and they're getting very expensive. Like Ben Johnson is out there saying, I want $15 million. So either you can pay your number one receiver or you can pay your coach, which I know it doesn't go on a salary cap. I get it. But
exactly.
But it's still like, I'm just saying, like I shouldn't say either or, but it's a funny comparison when a guy who's never coached like in the NFL before is asking for $15 million. But anyway, that's my spiel on that. But I feel very vehement and passionate about it, which is why I went in on it. But that's the way I look at it.
I mean, is Vrabel not doing that for the defense though? Because he's a defensive guy, so I would imagine his footprint is all over the defense. I don't know that for sure, but the reason I do lean that direction is just because I think the ideal coaching staff would actually have I think player coach is the wrong word, but a guy that does get really along well with the players, does a lot of the management, is a good game manager in terms of in-game decision making, and then you have that brilliant offensive coordinator and a strong defensive coordinator as well. But the problem is, like Cy mentioned, once those guys get hired as head coaches, so you lose them. So you kind of almost don't have a choice, because I do think a lot of like those types of guys, aren't really built for, that kind of leadership role all the time. But I think we've seen enough success with it. And, obviously, you're going to lose that guy anyway. So so to answer your original question, Zach, Ben Johnson is my number one choice. I wouldn't be mad at Vrabel, but Ben Johnson is definitely my number one guy.
Ben Johnson is not coming to Washington.
Why not?
He could.
No way.
He could. Where would he go instead?
David Tepper is going to throw the kitchen sink at him.
He already said no. Why would he say yes after now they've already picked the quarterback and he looks awful? Why would he change his mind after a year?
Everybody
They tried
says
for him
no
instead of
though
right.
because it's a negotiation scheme. He's not
He's
going.
not
He's
going
not
to
going
go.
to Atlanta. He's not going to go to Atlanta because the quarterback situation isn't there. But the quarterback situation isn't necessarily there in Washington.
You got your
Yeah,
pick
but
of
they can draft one.
and
He's
you
going
and
to be
you're
in a. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Evan.
sorry. No,
That's
it's true.
No,
true.
no,
And
go
you're
ahead.
telling me it comes down to the Bears. But you're telling me that if they went out and paid 15 million on Ben Johnson and the Bears say we're keeping Fields, that Josh Harris isn't going to say, all right, let's go up to number one and pick Caleb Williams. So if it comes down to the Bears, but if the Bears keep Fields, then Ben Johnson will get to pick his quarterback, and Josh Harris will say make it happen.
But
So
Yeah,
why
and
do you need to draft the quarterback? Why not go to the Chargers? I feel like the Chargers would be the number one spot right now for Ben Johnson unequivocally because you already have the quarterback there.
that's actually a very fair
Chargers are
point.
great.
That's probably the only job I would think would be more appealing than others for a guy like Ben Johnson because he was able to be very successful with Jared Goff as an OC, and Justin Herbert is like a better version of Goff. Like, I mean, Herbert is still super young, so that's a really good point, Zach. But if not the Chargers, though, I think the Commanders are going to be one of the top openings because they just got new ownership. Like that changes the entire thing. You get new ownership and you get a top 5 pick with the potential to, even if you don't get your pick of the litter, you still get Drake May or Jaden Daniels, who both of whom are great young players that people are going to want to coach, right? Like, so like I feel like with the Chargers, they already picked Herbert. You're right, and although they haven't like reached the Super Bowl, they made the playoffs with their prior coach. If you go to Washington and you go with this new ownership, draft your own quarterback, and you win with them, you're a legend. Like people are going to be like, you're the greatest thing to walk on mankind in Washington D.C. And that's one thing to keep in mind. So I think that's a very like if I was a coach,
too,
yeah, if I was a coach, I'd be like it'd be like maybe Chargers number one if I'm an offensive mind, but then Commanders would be right next to them in terms of a team that I'd want to go to. Because it's not, it's like, I almost compare it to the Mets, Evan. It's not like the Wilpon Mets, like where you aren't going to get paid or you're not going to get your opportunity to sign the players you want or draft the players you want. You go there, you're given all the resources you want, and it's your chance to change a franchise altogether.
Yeah, and the money thing, it does come down to an owner being willing to because that's basically just money coming out of the owner's pockets and doesn't hit the salary cap. So that is a dynamic on which owners would be willing to pay it. But yeah, I think he'll find a job this cycle. It's his liking, but we'll see.
Yeah, Harris paid Doc Rivers plenty of money, so I'm sure Ben Johnson can negotiate a good contract. The other thing I will say though is keep an eye out for Brian Callahan. I bet you he was in a lot of people's conversations last year, but didn't get hired. And Brian Callahan's OC of the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the success that they've had in the offense, even with Burrow hurt, even if they didn't make the playoffs, will give him an opportunity somewhere potentially.
Mike McDonald too is one I like for Baltimore, defense coordinator. If you want to go defense, I guess we should jump into the games. Unless you guys got any other.
Let's do it.
So Browns at Texans is the first one on Saturday afternoon. As Zach mentioned earlier, Cleveland's a 2.5 point favorite on the road. Over under 44.5. I guess maybe Zach, do you want to kind of close out your earlier point and make your pick and say why? I guess is how we'll do it.
Sorry, this is the Browns-Texans game.
Yep.
So I have got the Texans money line here. I think they're going to win a playoff game. And I think as good as the Cleveland Browns defense is, I just think the Texans offense is firing at all cylinders right now. And CJ Stroud just has so much momentum behind him. DeMeco Ryans should be the coach of the year. And let's keep that momentum going for Houston. I'm going to give them the money line here. Cy?
I think the real coach of the year will win this game, which is Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns. I'm picking them money line because don't get me wrong, DeMeco Ryan, Shane Steichen, people like that deserve it. DeMeco Ryan won. You would think it'd be him. But Kevin Stefanski, with all the weirdness that's happened at their quarterback position and everything else, their team has been uber successful, even with Flacco coming in recently. And the reason I picked the Browns is it's simple. I watched the Texans the last couple of weeks. They're a solid team. They're not they're not the team that is going against this Browns defense. Like Stroud could have a great game, but even then, that defense is very, very, very good. And I expect Myles Garrett to get home a few times. I expect them to make big plays in the secondary. And the flip side of that is they haven't proven to me that they can stop Amari Cooper, and I'm not going to start believing that even at home. So I think Cleveland will win this. I think you said it was 3.5 spread, right, Evan?
2.5.
2.5. I'll take them to cover. I think they'll win by a field goal or more. I think the Browns will win this.
I think that's the smart pick. I really do want to pick Texans money line because I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And CJ Stroud is like the dream face of the franchise quarterback. That dude, like, oh my gosh, I just love that dude. Him on McAfee before the national championship, dude. Oh God, he's so good. On and off the field. So I really want to root for him. I do think the smart pick is to say Cleveland wins and covers though, but I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game. Peacock. We got a Peacock game. First off, how ridiculous is it that they dropped it on a streaming service, the Dolphins and Chiefs, for the Taylor Swift game? All the Swifties gonna have to pay that $5 for Peacock or whatever. Dolphins at Chiefs. Chiefs are -4.5. Over/under is 44.5. Again, as Zach mentioned earlier, -1 is the forecast, not just on the wind chill. That's the actual temperature, I believe. So it's gonna be very cold. No one is giving the Dolphins a chance here, and I have been the one that's been hating on the Dolphins all year, saying that they can't beat good teams, and they definitely have it on the road. They did beat the Cowboys at home.
Don't do it.
And it's freezing. It's freezing. No one's giving them a chance. I'm tempted, and I probably would take the points, but I do think the Chiefs will win.
Oh, damn it. I thought he was going to do it. I was looking forward to it.
Good call.
And I want to clarify, are Mostert and Waddle out? Are they both out?
I believe Mostert is back at practice and will play.
Because that's obviously a big difference for them, but yeah.
I think Waddle's out.
And I guess the thing I'll add is that if there's one defense that knows how to stop Tyreek Hill, it's the team that, that he played for. So I think they'll limit it. Actually, so Mostert's still TBD, it looks like.
Because that's going to make a massive difference for them. They can't just only rely on Tyreek Hill the entire game. Devon Achane's a stud, but it's like you said, -1 degrees. Like it honestly feels like this is payback to the Dolphins for burning everyone, or putting everyone in the heater, like you're talking about all season, Evan. Now they're going to be playing in the tundra on the road. Kind of love the paradox, parody there. It's a nice paradox.
That's a fantastic comparison, Si. That really is. What do you got going on in this game? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick the Chiefs. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I just believe that at the end of the day, in the playoffs, I trust Mahomes more. You put everything else aside. I know he's got the worst weapons, with Kelsey hurt and everything like that, but he's playing at home in -1 degree weather. He's shown that he can win cold games, and he's shown that he can win in the playoffs. Tua has not shown that he can win in cold situations. I believe that was the reason they lost to the Bills last year, end of the season. And I love me some Mike McDaniels, but the Chiefs secondary is very young, and I think they'll be smart about how they coach him up this week. So I'm gonna take the Chiefs to win and cover.
Chiefs win and cover. This is an easy one for me.
Yeah. So last year it was Skylar Thompson facing the Bills, and it was bad weather, but it wasn't Tua, and they almost won that game. I
forgot about that. It was Skylar Thompson.
Yeah. And they almost beat them.
They did almost win. Yeah. I know you don't want to pick the Chiefs. I get it.
And I'm the one that has been again making these points all year, and I also don't think Tua is good in the cold, but I just feel like eventually the bridge is going to break and they're going to pull one out, but everything's stacked against them here. So the smart pick is just lay the points with the Chiefs. So I think you guys are on it there.
I like an alt spread action -2.5 Chiefs in this game. That is my go-to right there.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Love a good tease. Okay, Steelers at Bills. Buffalo is 10-point favorites. TJ Watt's out. I think Buffalo wins and covers. But
what was the spread?
10.
Gee, that's a big spread, though. I'll say Buffalo wins. I'm not super confident in the cover because even with Watt out, Mike Tomlin he's too good to get absolutely dismantled, in my opinion.
I think this is another relatively easy one here. I think the Bills clean up their mistakes, and I think this is a bloodbath of a game. I think this is like a 30-7 game, honestly. So give me the Bills to win and cover. I'm not intimidated by that 10-point spread at all.
The
You might
interesting
be able to
thing is
come
I
in that.
just caught the over under of 36.5, which for a game that's like -10 is very low. And that means that, like Zach said, you kind of need the Steelers to basically not score. But the offense has been pretty good with Mason Rudolph last week in the absolute pouring rain, notwithstanding. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 10,
And you
10
got to
is
keep in
not
mind,
10.
that
I don't think I would
was
mind.
with George Pickens. That was with George Pickens, like basically doing nothing, who has been terrific the weeks prior to that. So it could be a big hit game for him.
And if there's one thing we know about the Bills is that they'll screw around and almost lose, these types of games. So,
Yep.
but I think they'll win. 4 p.m. on Fox. I think this is where the really good games, the ones I like, start coming. So Mike McCarthy going back, or I guess, it's in Dallas, but facing his old team in the Packers. Packers at Boys. Dallas is a 7.5-point favorite at home. Over under is 50.5. Cy, do you want to kick us off with a pick here?
Yeah, dude, I want to do it so badly. I want to do it so
Don't do it.
badly, but it's
Don't do
in
it.
Dallas. It's in Dallas. Oh man, I'll pick Dallas to win, but I'm not picking the spread. It's not because I don't think Dallas is a good team. It's because one, I don't necessarily trust them in the playoffs because I have no reason to trust them in the playoffs, and then two, it's because the Packers have been awesome to finish out the season in the context of what was expected out of them and how they cleared up the house. And the one thing I want to point to is their short passing game, or their ability to get the ball out quickly, is how they move the ball down the field. Like Jordan Love completes so many passes because he's quick and he's decisive. And that's how you beat a team like the Cowboys. You get the ball out quickly so you don't get the pass rush in your face. And their secondary can't take you away because you don't give their, do or die corners an opportunity to take a pick six on the house on you, right? So I legitimately believe this is a great matchup for the Packers to have, where they get the ball out quickly. But at the end of the day, it's in Dallas. And Dak has been playing very well recently. I'll give him that. And for that reason, I'll give Dallas the win. But I'm by no means super confident in this one.
I have Dallas winning, but not cover. I'll say it's maybe a backdoor cover. I just don't think the Packers can quite keep up, but I think they'll give them some trouble. I think they'll score a good amount of points. Like, I think Jordan Love's had an awesome second half of the season. I think he's been great. I think LaFleur will have it drawn up. The one thing I want to say is shout out our boy Carson Wentz for pulling off the win last week and allowing this to happen, because these were the dream NFC matchup combinations, as opposed to if he loses that game, then it gets flip-flopped. But we'll talk about the next game in a second. But these were the dream combinations. So shout out to Wentz for pulling that out and giving us these two super fun matchups.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, Jordan Love, he deserves to get a lot of love this year for, putting the team on his back and getting to the playoffs. He plays with a lot of heart, a lot of soul. But now, having said that, Dallas by 1,000,000. This is not going to be close. You guys are overthinking this. Dallas at home, I mean, they just massacred the Washington Commanders away. And like what they are going to do to this Packers team, it's going to be a 20-point game. So I feel very confident about this one as well. You guys are overthinking this. Dallas by 1,000,000, certainly by 7.5.
The fact that you just compared the Green Bay Packers to the Washington Commanders might be the biggest insult that you've ever given the Lambeau Field soldiers ever. That's ridiculous to me.
A Commanders team that had to lose to secure the number 2 pick, as opposed to like the 5th pick. Like, so
And
a
that
team
game
that
was close.
lose.
And that game was close going into halftime, and you could just tell that as soon as the second half started, the Commanders were like, all right, don't fuck around. Excuse my language. Don't mess around and pull the Texans from a year ago. Although what is funny is that is what gave the Texans CJ Stroud, because otherwise they probably would have picked Bryce Young number 1 overall. So we got to remember that. That's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah. Sunday Night Football is the game I'm definitely most excited for.
This game is
I like this.
I'm very appreciative that Monday is a work holiday, so that I don't feel as bad staying up late to watch this game. But it's Rams at Lions. Obviously, they made the big trade a few years ago, Matt Stafford for Jared Goff and others. It got the Rams a Super Bowl. And then now Detroit has finally used those assets and become one of the better teams in the NFC, won the division. They got the home game at Ford Field. And guess who's coming up? It's Matthew Stafford back, back to his old stopping grounds. You can't ask for much more than this. It's Lions -3. Over under is 51.5. I think we got a lot of points. Let's go to Zach here to.
First of all, great intro, Ev. I like the way you introed that. That was fantastic.
Agreed.
That was fantastic.
Agreed. Yeah, that was
He's going to be hype.
I'm not going to overthink this one. Detroit starts fast. They need to start fast. Detroit knows this. They're playing at home. This is their opportunity, and they're going to win by more than 3. So I've got Detroit winning and covering. I do think that this game will have moments where it's very close. You're going to see the momentum swing the Rams' way at some point, the second or third quarter. But I really think that good teams, they finish the deal. And Detroit is one of those teams that are Dan Campbell. And I think they're going to close it out in the fourth quarter. So I actually see this being a double-digit game, somewhere in the regards of like 30-20, 31-23, or 31-20, something like that. So give me Detroit wins and covers.
Yeah, so I'm trying to make what I think are the smart picks here and not as much go with my heart, because my heart feels the exact same way as Zach. I want it to be an awesome close game, but I want to see Detroit pull it out and face Dallas next week in a rematch of that ridiculous ref game from Saturday Night Football or Monday Night Football, whatever it was, Monday Night Football, I think. This is a nightmare opponent for Detroit. If I'm not mistaken, the Rams killed them earlier in the season. I think it was in Detroit. I think, like I said earlier, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these players with how pumped up the Detroit crowd is going to be. I think that, could help them in some respects, but could also work against them. There has to be an underdog that's going to win this weekend. Not all 6 favorites are going to win. I'm pretty sure about that, and I think this is the one that makes the most sense, that the Rams actually go in there and win this game. But I hope it doesn't happen. I am rooting for Detroit. I think it'll be close, but I think Rams money line is the pick, or at least taking those 3 points.
Listen, man, I'm not complaining because out of the 3 of us, was the one that was on the Rams all year. And I caught some flack from you guys throughout the year, and I said, wait for them to get healthy and then come talk to me. And Kyren, Buka, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald. The funny part is, if you remove last year, right, where they were clearly very banged up and ended up trading away a lot of their players, would we have come into this year thinking of, the Rams as anything other than one of the better teams in the NFC? I don't think we would have. I think the reality is they just haven't been healthy, and that's what the difference has been. And now they're healthy. Stafford is playing like, Stafford that won the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to go win the Super Bowl, but I am saying that he's going to go win back at the team that never really could get him to the playoffs. Because Zach said at the very beginning of this podcast, he could never take Detroit to the playoffs. I'm going to say Detroit could never take him to the playoffs. And he's going to go to Detroit and say, this is why, and he's going to win that game. So I believe Matt Stafford and the Rams will win. I mean, maybe this is a crazy pick because Detroit's a great team. I don't want this to be like me discrediting Detroit. I just believe in the Rams and what they have going on right now. Also, Kyren is such a dog. I mean, he is unstoppable right now.
Just a quick
Sam Laporta being out, it's huge too.
That's huge. Good point.
Huge loss.
Quick correction. They did not play Detroit this year. So this is the first time meeting. But
interesting.
As I was combing through the Rams schedule, the Rams, they play up to their potential. So they took the Baltimore Ravens into overtime in Baltimore. They beat the 49ers this year. They've played pretty well against good teams. So that's a great point, Si. I didn't recognize that initially.
It'd be a good one. Last game, Monday Night Football, a bit of a snooze, but Eagles at Bucks. Eagles are 3-point favorites on the road. Over-unders 43.5. Despite the Eagles being horrendous lately, they hold a spread advantage. I wish this was the Saints that had won this division and got this game, because then I would have picked the Saints to win outright. I just don't think the Bucks are really all that good, and I think the Eagles will, despite how bad it's been, they'll find a way to put it together and win this game. So I'll say Eagles win and cover.
What's the cover number again?
3.
Go ahead, Zach.
Eagles win and cover for me as well.
Yeah, Eagles win and cover. I'm not going to give a crazy analysis. The only thing that's annoying about this one is, why did the Eagles screw over their entire team by putting these guys out there last week when clearly like Dallas was going to win that game. Like at a certain point, you pull them, dude. That AJ Brown injury, like that was their one chance of competing this playoffs, like to have AJ Brown healthy, and that did not look good. And then Jalen Hurts, like the next play, ends up messing up his finger, and he ended up playing the rest of the game and was all right. But I don't know. Sometimes I just think like your own pride gets in your own way, and that's just bad. Like you can't.
For anyone that's still on, we are trying to get to 100 subscribers by Super Bowl weekend so that the three of us can celebrate together. So if you aren't subscribed, which I realize we should have done this at the front because I don't think anyone's still listening at this point probably, but if you are,
To clip this.
if you're still listening and not subscribed, please subscribe so we can hit 100 by the Super Bowl.
Also, why are you still listening? Like, why would you? Why are you? If you are still listening, you have no life. That's what I have to say to you.
And that was Mondays Down South.